There is a moment in every person's life when the noise finally becomes too loud to ignore. Not the outer noise, but the inner one. The quiet pressure that says you are drifting too far from yourself. Most people feel it as a strange heaviness that appears in calm hours, or a soft ache behind the chest, or a silent discomfort when they look at their own reflection. It is not a warning. It is a memory. A memory of who you were before you learned to hide. People think that change means becoming someone new, someone stronger, sharper, more disciplined, more impressive. But here is the truth. Almost no one becomes someone new. They peel back what was never theirs. They return to what was always waiting underneath. You think you need to build a new identity from the ground up. But actually, you are removing the layers that were never you in the first place. Every person has a point in life when they stop chasing constant reinvention and suddenly realize that their best moments never came from pretending. They came from alignment. From the brief seconds when they forgot to play a role and simply acted from a deeper place. Those moments felt light, effortless, almost too natural to notice. But they were the closest you ever came to your real self. When people lose themselves, it does not happen through one dramatic decision. It is slow, silent, almost invisible. You adjust to expectations. You bend around pressure. You shrink to avoid judgment. You carry the weight of old wounds that taught you to stay small. And with each compromise, a thin layer of distance grows between you and the person you came here as. One layer becomes two. Two become many. Eventually, the distance feels normal. You forget there was ever a time when simplicity guided your choices instead of fear. Most people call this growing up. But growing up is not the same as drifting away. One is expansion, the other is erosion, and deep down you know the difference. There is a reason why certain memories still pull at you. A version of yourself you barely remember still lives inside those scenes. A version that was not performing, not apologizing, not negotiating its worth. This is why nostalgia feels so strangely heavy. It is not about missing the past. It is about missing yourself. Here is what most people never say out loud. You are not trying to evolve. You are trying to return to clarity, return to courage, return to the quiet confidence that once existed before life taught you to doubt your own instincts. Returning is not regression, it is restoration. You do not become someone new. You come back to who you always were before fear edited your personality. There is something important to understand. When your life feels tight, when every step feels heavier than it should, it is almost never because you lack discipline or strength. It is because you are carrying beliefs that do not belong to you. Beliefs absorbed from tired parents, or careless teachers, or old heartbreaks, or the shadows of past failures that convinced you to shrink a little more each year. Look closely and you will notice, the weight is not you. The weight is what covers you. Most people think they are broken because they feel disconnected from their own lives. But disconnection is not a flaw. It is a signal. A signal that the role you are playing is too small for the person you are becoming again. You think you need to reinvent yourself, but here is what it really means. You are remembering yourself. There is a simple truth hiding in the spaces between your thoughts. The real you is not lost, only buried. And anything buried can be uncovered with attention. Not with force, not with intensity, but with honest inner listening. This is your micro-practice. Silently notice which parts of your life feel heavy, not because they are hard, but because they are untrue. Let your attention rest there for a moment. Not to fix it, just to recognize it. Recognition is the first form of returning. Every time you feel that soft internal pull, do not rush past it. It is an invitation, a reminder from the deeper version of you that has been waiting patiently, untouched beneath everything you have survived. You may not realize it yet, but you are already moving closer to that version. The fact that you are listening now means the return has already begun. And here, before everything shifts inside you, leave one quiet word in the comments. The first word that rises when you think of who you used to be before life told you to dim your own light. because naming it brings you one step closer to remembering who you always were and who you are becoming again. There comes a point when the mind becomes tired of holding up the version of you that the world taught you to be. Not because that version is weak, but because it is borrowed. A mask, even a convincing one, becomes heavy when worn for too long. And people forget that masks do not fall off in one dramatic moment. They loosen slowly, quietly, in the tiny cracks of daily life. The moments when your reactions feel unfamiliar. The moments when your smile feels slightly forced. The moments when your silence feels safer than your truth. Most people think this discomfort means they are failing. But here is what it really means. A deeper part of you is trying to surface again. You often hear people say they want to change their life. They want to transform, upgrade, rewrite their story. But look closely, and you will see something different. They do not want to become someone else. They want to become the person they were before anything ever convinced them they were not enough. Here is the paradox. You think you are searching for a new identity, but actually, you are searching for permission to return to your original one. If you look back at the moments when you felt most alive, most grounded, most present, you will notice they were not moments of performance. They were not moments where you tried to impress anyone. They were moments where your actions were guided by something simple and quiet. Inner clarity. You were not trying to be anything. You were simply being. Most people lose this natural alignment because life teaches them to survive first and understand themselves later. You absorb expectations from family, pressure from society, the subtle demand to fit into roles you never chose. And piece by piece, you start editing yourself to reduce friction. You start softening your edges to avoid conflict. You silence your instincts to be easier to manage. And before you realize it, the original version of you is still there, but covered with the dust of years spent adapting. You think adaptation is maturity. But actually, too much adaptation becomes self-abandonment. There is a quiet moment that arrives for every person who has drifted too far. It often appears at night, when you feel strangely tired, even after rest. You sense that something inside you is misaligned, but you cannot name it. That feeling is not confusion. It is recognition. Your deeper self is knocking, asking to be let back into your life. Here is the truth most people never consider. Your real self is not fragile. It is not something you lost. It is something you have been protecting without realizing it. Even when you thought you were breaking, you were shielding a part of yourself that remained untouched by everything that happened to you. Most people believe they need to push harder, be tougher, work more, strive more. But the exhaustion they feel is not from effort. It is from resistance. Resistance against their own truth. Resistance against the voice inside that keeps saying, "This is not who you are meant to be." If you listen closely, you will notice a pattern. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you feel a small sinking inside. Every time you stay silent when your truth wants to rise, a quiet pressure builds. And every time you pretend everything is fine when it is not, your body reacts with heaviness. These sensations are not weaknesses. They are internal signals designed to guide you back. This is why returning to yourself does not feel like becoming stronger. It feels like becoming lighter. You have spent so many years carrying expectations, fears, and borrowed beliefs that you forgot how it feels to move freely. You forgot the natural rhythm of your own thoughts. You forgot what it feels like to act from instinct instead of anxiety. But none of this is lost. It is stored within you, waiting for space to emerge. Most people think they need to force their life into a new direction. But actually, they need to stop forcing themselves into shapes that do not fit. There is a softness inside you that has been waiting to come forward. Not softness as weakness, but softness as truth. The part of you that knows what feels right without explanation. The part that knows when to step forward and when to step back. The part that knows what you value even when the world distracts you. If you want to understand who you truly are beneath everything you have carried, pay attention to the moments when you feel unexpectedly calm. Calm is the natural environment of your real self. It is not created, it is uncovered. And here is a quiet insight that most people overlook. The reason you feel pulled towards certain directions, certain choices, certain dreams, is not because you are becoming someone new. It is because your original self is trying to rise again, guiding you back to alignment through instinct and memory. So if you feel lost right now, know this: you are not drifting away. You are circling back. There is something almost sacred about the moment when a person realizes they have been measuring their life with the wrong markers. You look at your achievements, your efforts, your routines, and somewhere deep inside you feel the quiet truth. None of it explains why you still feel distant from yourself. That distance is not emptiness. It is the space between the person you learn to be and the person you truly are. People often think they are searching for purpose, direction, clarity. But look closer and you will see something much simpler. They are searching for a feeling of inner rightness, a feeling of coming home to themselves, a feeling that says, yes, this is me. Everything else is secondary. You think your life changes when you add something new, but here is what really changes you: removing the things that bury who you are. If you pay attention, you will notice that certain situations drain you not because they are difficult, but because they are misaligned. Certain conversations exhaust you because you are not being honest. Certain goals feel heavy not because they are impossible, but because they were never yours to begin with. Most people never question why they feel this way. They assume fatigue means failure, or that doubt means weakness. But the truth is simpler. Your deeper self is rejecting what does not belong to you. When you were younger, you did not evaluate yourself through the eyes of others. You acted from instinct. You spoke from truth. You followed what felt natural. That is not childishness. That is purity. And every step away from that purity creates a sense of internal fracture. Not visible, not dramatic, but real. You are not trying to become wiser. You are trying to reconnect. Think of the times when you felt unexpectedly strong. Times when you made a decision without hesitation. Times when you protected your peace without explanation. Times when you walked away from something that did not fit you anymore. Those moments were not accidents. They were glimpses of the person beneath the layers. You think confidence is built from effort, but actually confidence is what returns when you stop abandoning yourself. There is a strange truth about human beings. We spend years assembling identities to please others, only to spend even more years trying to dismantle them so we can breathe again. It is not failure. It is awakening. The beginning of your return often looks like confusion, boredom, irritability, restlessness. But these are not signs that something is wrong. These are signs that your inner world is outgrowing the outer roles you are still trying to maintain. Here is what most people misunderstand. Returning to yourself does not require a dramatic reset. It requires honesty. Quiet, unfiltered honesty. The kind that makes you pause in the middle of the day and admit to yourself, this is not who I am anymore. When you say those words internally, something shifts. Not loudly, but unmistakably. A tiny crack appears in the old identity you have been holding together. And through that crack, your original self begins to breathe again. Look at the moments you regret, not the mistakes, but the self-betrayals. The times you stayed silent, the times you played small, the times you accepted less than you deserved because you were afraid to be seen. Regret lives in the places where you abandoned yourself, not where you tried and failed. And understanding this makes something inside you straighten, lift. Remember, your true self is not hiding from you. It is waiting for the noise to settle. Most people think they are running out of time, but what they are really running out of is patience for the life that does not match who they are inside. When this realization hits, you start craving simplicity. You start craving truth. You start craving the feeling of being fully present in your own skin again. Here is a mass market truth that most people feel but rarely articulate. You think you want more from life, but actually, you want more of yourself in your life. When you begin to return to who you always were, you will notice subtle changes. Your reactions feel cleaner. Your boundaries feel more natural. Your choices feel less dramatic. You stop negotiating with your own intuition. You begin trusting your internal signals before anyone else's opinions. And slowly, the distance inside you closes. There is one quiet realization that marks the turning point. You stop chasing the person you think you should become, and you start listening to the person you already are. The return feels gentle at first, but gentle does not mean small. It means authentic. You are not building a new foundation. You are uncovering the one that was always there, beneath the fear, beneath the pressure, beneath the years of survival. Most people call this growth, but growth is not always a reaching upward. Sometimes growth is a falling inward, into the part of you that has been waiting for your attention. And if you listen closely, you will hear it now. That soft, steady voice inside you saying, "I never left. I was only covered." There is a moment in every inner shift when you suddenly realize that the person you have been pretending to be is far more exhausted than the person you truly are. Pretending drains you, authenticity restores you. And this is why the return to yourself often feels like a quiet kind of relief, even when nothing external has changed yet. The pressure drops. The air feels clearer. The weight you have been carrying for years becomes lighter, not because the world is easier, but because you are no longer fighting your own nature. You think you need to upgrade your identity to feel whole, but the deeper truth is this: wholeness appears the moment you stop abandoning the original version of yourself. Look at your life closely, and you will notice an interesting pattern. The situations that feel peaceful are the ones where you act from instinct. The situations that feel heavy are the ones where you act from fear. And fear is always borrowed. You were not born with it. It was taught to you by people who carried their own wounds. You inherited beliefs that were never meant to define you. Most people do not realize how much of their inner world is built from secondhand stories. Someone once told you that your emotions were too much. Someone else told you that your dreams were unrealistic. Someone criticized your voice, your sensitivity, your confidence, your speed, your pace. Over time, you internalized these messages and built an identity around them. But that identity never belonged to you. It was constructed to protect you. And protection, while necessary at times, is not the same as authenticity. Here is a truth that shifts everything. The strongest version of you is the one you were before the world taught you to hide. When people begin returning to themselves, they often feel disoriented. A part of you wants to cling to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. A part of you wants to hold on to the identity that kept you safe, even if it kept you silent. But notice this: the discomfort you feel when you step toward authenticity is temporary. The discomfort you feel when you stay away from yourself is permanent. Most people mistake permanent discomfort for stability. They call it how life is. But life is not supposed to feel like a constant negotiation with your own truth. Life is supposed to feel like alignment, not perfection, alignment. Here is a mass market block that hits deeply for many people. You think you are tired because life is difficult, but actually you are tired because you keep choosing what disconnects you. Your body knows. Your mind knows. Even your silence knows. Have you ever wondered why some memories feel alive, while others feel hollow? Why some choices energize you instantly, while others drain you before you even act? Why some people make you feel expansive, while others make you shrink inside yourself? These reactions are not random. They are data. Your inner world has been speaking to you long before you learn to translate its signals. When you begin to return to who you always were, those signals become louder. You start noticing that certain dreams feel familiar, as if you once held them long before you had the words to describe them. You start noticing that certain desires feel ancient, rooted in something deeper than circumstance. And you start noticing that certain fears dissolve the moment you stop agreeing with them. There is something you need to hear. You have outgrown the version of yourself that was built for survival. And now, without realizing it, you are stepping into the version built for truth. The old you was shaped by reactions. The real you is shaped by intention. The old you tried to fit into spaces. The real you creates new ones. The old you tried to be predictable. The real you tries to be honest. This shift is not loud. It is not dramatic. It shows up in the smallest choices. What you tolerate, what you prioritize, what you say yes to, what you quietly walk away from. Your return does not start with a breakthrough. It starts with a subtle internal click. A quiet sentence forming inside you. I can't keep living like someone I'm not. Once that sentence appears, even softly, everything begins to change. Not instantly, but inevitably. The mask begins to slip. The truth begins to rise. You begin to feel the difference between pressure and alignment. And suddenly, the life you thought you wanted starts looking small compared to the life that matches who you truly are. Here is your integrated micro-practice for this chapter of your return. When you feel confused or overwhelmed, ask yourself a single quiet question. Does this feel like me? Not, is this smart? Not, is this safe? Not, will they approve? Only, does this feel like me? Let the answer appear without force. Inner truth does not shout. It reveals. And something else happens with this question. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to recognize your own tone, your own rhythm, your own internal compass. You stop outsourcing your direction. You stop diluting your instincts. You stop apologizing for wanting a life that feels real. Most people say they want clarity, but clarity is not something you find. It is something you return to. There comes a moment in every inner journey when the pieces begin to click in a way that is almost unsettling. You look at your thoughts, your choices, your habits, and you suddenly see the thread connecting them all. Not a thread of destiny, not a thread of fate, but a thread of self-abandonment. It becomes clear that the life you have been living was built more from fear than from truth. And in that moment, something inside you refuses to continue. Most people think this refusal means rebellion, but it is not rebellion. It is recognition, a recognition of the quiet truth you have been avoiding. You are no longer willing to shrink to keep the peace inside a life that no longer fits you. You think becoming yourself requires a dramatic leap. But the deeper truth is this. Becoming yourself is a process of remembering, not reinventing. Look back at your life, not through the lens of what you achieved, but through the lens of what felt like home. The way your mind worked before criticism shaped it. The way your instincts guided you before doubt interrupted them. The way your energy flowed before exhaustion trained you to stay small. These are not memories of who you used to be. These are blueprints of who you still are beneath everything you carried. Returning to yourself is not about becoming stronger. It is about letting go of what made you forget your strength. Here is a quiet pattern almost everyone shares, though few admit it. When you act against your own truth, you feel disconnected. When you act in alignment with it, you feel alive. The world has convinced people that aliveness is rare, reserved for special moments or lucky days. But that is not true. Aliveness is the natural state of a human being who is not at war with themselves. When you return to who you truly are, your life begins to feel different. Not softer, not easier, but more real. You begin choosing things that nourish you instead of things that numb you. You begin speaking in ways that feel honest instead of strategic. You begin walking away from what drains you, not because you are cold or distant, but because you finally recognize your worth. You think you are searching for meaning. But what you are really searching for is alignment. People spend years trying to become someone new, believing that their future depends on building a better version of themselves. But eventually something shifts. You wake up one morning and realize that nothing feels more powerful than simply being the version of yourself that existed before the world told you to change. The version that knew what mattered without needing permission. You are not becoming. You are returning. Most people feel afraid at this stage, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of letting go of the identities that once made them feel safe. But notice something important. The fear you feel now is lighter than the heaviness you felt when you were pretending. Fear fades with action. Heaviness fades with honesty. Here is a mass market block that hits deep because it is true for nearly everyone. You think you are behind in life, but actually, you are simply arriving at a version of yourself you postponed for too long. Your timing is not late. Your timing is precise. Everything that brought you here, the failures, the doubts, the endings, the silence, was shaping a space inside you that your real self could finally step into. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wrong. Every step was a return, even the ones that felt like detours. If you ever feel lost again, remember this simple insight. No one is more equipped to guide you back to yourself than you. You have always known what feels true. You have always known which directions light you up and which ones drain you. You have always known when something was right for you, even when you tried to override it. The truth has never been absent. You just stopped listening, but you are listening now. And this is the moment when the return becomes irreversible, not because you force it, but because you cannot unsee what you've realized. The person you are returning to has waited patiently through every chapter of your life. They survived your heartbreaks. They stood quietly behind your mistakes. They whispered through your intuition even when you ignored it. They endured everything so that one day when you were ready, you could rise again. You are ready now. Before we close, pause for a moment and notice what word rises inside you when you think of the person you were before fear shaped your life. Shaped. Let that word surface. Write it in the comments, not as a performance, not as a declaration, but as a small act of remembrance. A way of saying to yourself, I am coming back. Tune in, recalibrate, shift your frequency.